Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of her cargo ship Wanderlust, watching the swirling purple nebula that marked the edge of civilized space. Most pilots called this region the graveyard, those who bothered to name it at all. To the major shipping corporations and their alien owners, it might as well not exist. But to Sarah, these dangerous lanes were home. The ship's systems hummed around her, a melody she knew better than her own heartbeat. Wanderlust wasn't pretty. Her hull bore the scars of a dozen close calls, and her paint had long since faded to a patchy gray. But she was dependable. In 15 years of impossible runs through the deadliest parts of space, she'd never let Sarah down. Incoming transmission, the ship's AI announced. Origin, Arxian refugee vessel Dawn's Hope. Sarah's fingers tightened on the railing. The Arxians were the last species she'd expected to contact her. Towering reptilians with natural armor and a warrior culture, they considered humans barely better than vermin. Their empire controlled half the known galaxy, and they made sure everyone knew it. "Put them through," she said, straightening her worn flight jacket. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing an Arxian female. Her scales were a deep blue-black, marking her as nobility, but they were dull with stress. Behind her, Sarah glimpsed other Arxians huddled in what looked like a cramped cargo hold. "Captain Chen," the Arxian said, her translator struggling with the formal tones of her language. "I am Sentinel Kexri. We require your services." Sarah kept her face neutral, though her mind raced. Arxian refugees. That was new. "I'm listening." "We seek passage through the graveyard, to the free systems beyond. We can pay." Kexri's secondary eyes flickered, a sign of anxiety in her species. "We've heard you're the only one who can make this run." "The graveyard's more dangerous than usual lately," Sarah said carefully. "Lots of automated defenses showing up. Ancient tech, nasty stuff. Even the smugglers are staying clear. We know the risks." Kexri's voice hardened. "We also know your reputation, human. They say you've never lost a cargo." Sarah studied the Arxian and the desperate refugees behind her. There had to be at least 30 of them crammed into that hold. "That's because I don't take suicidal runs. Why are Arxian nobles fleeing through the deadliest part of space?" Kexri's scales rippled, their equivalent of a bitter laugh. "Because the alternatives are worse. We are dissidents. The Empire calls us traitors for suggesting peace with lesser species might be preferable to endless conquest. And now they're hunting you." "Yes." Kexri's primary eyes met Sarah's. "The penalty for our crimes is death. Not just for us, but for our entire genetic lines. We have children aboard, Captain." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. This was exactly the kind of job she should refuse. Arxian military vessels would be hunting them. The automated defenses in the graveyard were getting more aggressive by the day, and helping political refugees flee the Empire carried a death sentence. But she'd started running dangerous cargo for a reason, to help people who had nowhere else to turn. And she'd seen enough of the Empire's justice to know Kexri wasn't exaggerating. "Transfer the coordinates of your vessel," she said finally, "and let's discuss payment." Kexri's scales brightened slightly. "You'll help us. I'll get you through the graveyard. After that, you're on your own." Sarah moved to her pilot's chair, already plotting courses in her head. "But I have conditions. First, you follow my orders without question. The graveyard kills anyone who hesitates. Second, I need to know exactly what's hunting you so I can plan accordingly." Agreed to both. Kexri's image flickered as she transmitted data. "We're being pursued by the 16th Fleet, commanded by Supreme Hunter Vexicon. He's notorious for his thoroughness." Sarah's blood ran cold. The 16th Fleet was the Empire's most decorated hunting force, and Vexicon was legendary for his hatred of humans. This job had just gone from dangerous to nearly impossible. "Triple my usual rate," she said, scanning the sensor data from Kexri's ship. "Half now, half on delivery. And you need to be ready to move the moment I dock." The longer we stay still, the better chance they have of finding us. Acceptable. Kexri's secondary eyes stopped flickering. You should know, Captain. Many of us believed humans were too cowardly for this kind of risk. I'm beginning to think we were wrong about many things. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Keep that open mind, Sentinel. You're going to need it where we're going. She began powering up Wanderlust's engines. We launch in 20 minutes. Chen out. As the hologram faded, Sarah pulled up the latest sensor data on the graveyard. The ancient defense systems were growing more numerous, spreading like a virus through space. Nobody knew who had built them or why, but they attacked anything that entered their territory. The safe routes through them changed constantly. Wanderlust, plot me a course that keeps us at least 2 light years from any known defense platforms, she ordered. And warm up the stealth systems. We're going to need everything working perfectly for this one. The ship's AI hummed acknowledgement, displaying a twisting route through the purple nebula. It would take them dangerously close to several gravitational anomalies, but it was their best chance of avoiding both the Empire and the ancient defenses. Sarah checked her weapons systems, making sure everything was primed. She hadn't survived this long by being unprepared. But as she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that this run would be different. She was used to smuggling contraband, not refugees, used to avoiding authorities, not outrunning the most dangerous fleet in the galaxy. Well, old girl, she muttered, patting Wanderlust's console, looks like we're about to really earn our reputation. The ship's engines thrummed in response, building to launch power. Through the viewport, the purple nebula waited, its swirling clouds concealing both sanctuary and death. Sarah Chen, the human pilot no one else would hire, was about to attempt the impossible and hopefully change some minds along the way. She just had to survive long enough to succeed. The transfer of refugees from Dawn's Hope to Wanderlust took precisely 18 minutes. Sarah watched through her ship's cameras as the Arctians filed aboard, their movements disciplined despite their obvious fear. Their children, scaled younglings barely tall enough to reach her waist, clutched precious belongings and tried to mimic their parents' dignity. Secure yourselves in the cargo hold, Sarah instructed over the intercom. It's been retrofitted with emergency seating. This isn't going to be a smooth ride. Kexri appeared on the bridge moments later, her armor gleaming dully under the emergency lights. We're all aboard, Captain. The children are secured first, as you requested. Good. Sarah's fingers danced across the controls, disengaging the docking clamps. We need to move. Your old ship's already transmitting a locator beacon. The Arctian's scales darkened with anger. Impossible. I checked it myself. They're built into the hull, Sarah explained, pushing Wanderlust's engines to full power. Standard Imperial design. Probably activated the moment you went off your registered course. The massive purple nebula loomed ahead as they accelerated away from the abandoned refugee vessel. Sarah had plotted their course through its thinnest point, where the cosmic dust would provide cover without completely blinding their sensors. How did you know about the beacons? Kexri asked, watching the nebula approach. Used to strip Imperial ships for parts. Sarah allowed herself a small grin. Found all sorts of interesting secrets that way. A warning light flashed on her console. Multiple contacts, Wanderlust's AI announced. Automated defense platforms activating. Through the viewport, Sarah saw them. Angular structures of black metal, ancient and alien, emerging from the nebula's swirling depths. They were bigger than she remembered, each one nearly the size of a small cruiser. As she watched, lines of purple energy began pulsing along their surfaces. By the first egg, Kexri breathed. What are they? The reason nobody comes this way. Sarah's hands tightened on the controls. Strap in, Sentinel. This is where it gets interesting. The first defense platform fired, a beam of purple energy slicing through space where they had been moments before. Sarah had already thrown Wanderlust into a spinning dive, using the nebula's currents to boost their speed. The ship's hull creaked in protest. How are you predicting their attacks? Kexri demanded, her claws digging into the co-pilot's seat. I'm not. Sarah wove between two more energy beams, her eyes fixed on the sensor displays. They're ancient, but their targeting systems follow patterns. Once you learn to read the energy buildups. Wanderlust shuddered as a beam grazed their shields. Warning lights flashed across the console. Shield capacity at 60%, the AI reported calmly. Thanks for the update, Sarah muttered, pushing the engines harder. The defense platforms were fully active now, filling space with a deadly web of energy beams. But they were also revealing something she'd never noticed before. Look at their firing patterns, she said, gesturing to the tactical display. They're not random. They're hurting us. Kexri leaned forward, her military training evident in her focused gaze. Towards that dark region of the nebula. But why? Let's find out. Sarah fired the maneuvering thrusters, appearing to yield to the platform's guidance, while maintaining enough speed to dodge their attacks. Something tells me this is important. They plunged deeper into the nebula, the purple clouds growing thicker around them. The defense platform's attacks grew less frequent but more precise, continuing to guide them along an invisible path. Sarah's sensors were nearly blind now, forcing her to rely on instinct and the platform's own movements to navigate. Suddenly, the nebula thinned. Wanderlust burst into a vast clear sphere within the cosmic storm, and both Sarah and Kexri gasped. Suspended in the void was a massive structure, its architecture unlike anything either of them had seen. It stretched for kilometers, its surface covered in the same black metal as the defense platforms, but interwoven with pulsing lines of purple energy. It was clearly a station of some kind, but its purpose was impossible to determine. It's still powered, Sarah whispered, checking her readings. After who knows how many thousands of years. The defense platforms, Kexri realized. They weren't attacking us. They were testing us. Testing our ability to follow their guidance, maybe. Sarah brought Wanderlust to a relative stop, maintaining a safe distance from the structure. Question is, why show us this? And why now? Before Kexri could respond, a new alarm blared. Multiple Imperial signatures detected, the AI announced. 16th Fleet configuration. They're following our ion trail through the nebula. Sarah's mind raced. The ancient structure could be a sanctuary or a trap, but they were out of options. The 16th Fleet would catch them in open space, and the nebula was too thin here to hide. Sentinel, she said, turning to Kexri. I'm about to do something incredibly stupid. I need you to trust me. The Archean's scales rippled with nervous energy, but she nodded. You've gotten us this far, human. What's your plan? Those defense platforms led us here for a reason. Sarah fired up Wanderlust's engines, pointing them directly at the ancient station. Let's see if they'll let us get closer and find out why. As they approached, the station's energy patterns shifted. A section of its surface began to move, panels sliding apart to reveal what looked like a docking bay. It's inviting us in, Kexri said softly, or getting ready to trap us. Sarah checked the fleet's position again. They were getting closer. But we're about to find out. Send word to your people. Tell them to prepare for anything. Wanderlust glided toward the opening, its sensors probing the ancient structure for any sign of threat. Behind them, the first Imperial ships emerged from the nebula, their weapons charging. Sarah took a deep breath, guiding her ship into the unknown darkness of the station. Time to see what secrets the dead of space have been keeping. Wanderlust drifted into the ancient station's docking bay, its running lights casting eerie shadows on walls that hadn't seen illumination in millennia. As soon as they crossed the threshold, energy fields shimmered to life behind them, sealing the bay. Multiple Imperial vessels attempting to follow, the AI reported. Defense platforms engaging. Through the closing bay doors, Sarah glimpsed flashes of purple energy as the platforms opened fire on the 16th Fleet. But these weren't the calculated warning shots they'd used earlier. This was full defensive fury. "They're protecting us," Kexri said, watching the battle through Wanderlust's rear sensors. "But why?" Before Sarah could respond, new lights activated throughout the docking bay. Lines of purple energy, similar to those running through the station's exterior, began pulsing along the walls. A holographic interface materialized before the ship's viewport, displaying symbols in an unknown language. "Wanderlust analysis," Sarah requested. "Language structure unknown," the eye replied. "But pattern suggests a navigation interface. Station appears to be mapping itself for us." Sarah studied the shifting symbols. "Can you interface with it safely?" "Affirmative. Ancient systems are sophisticated but non-aggressive." "They appear to be excited." Kexri's scales rippled with surprise. "Excited? This technology is older than our civilizations. How can it have emotions?" "The better question," Sarah said, watching the symbols reorganize themselves, "is why it's so happy to see us." She turned to the Arxin. "Gather your people. We need to explore this place before the Empire finds a way in. Something tells me we're meant to be here." The refugees gathered in the docking bay, their faces mixing fear and awe as they stared at the ancient technology surrounding them. Sarah organized them into groups, making sure each had a mix of adults and children. "Stay together," she ordered. "Keep your comm units on. If anything feels wrong, you retreat to Wanderlust immediately." "Clear." They nodded, their military discipline evident even in their exile. Sarah led the first group toward a door that had opened at the station's silent invitation, its frame pulsing with that same purple energy. The corridors beyond were vast, clearly designed for beings larger than humans or even Arxins. The walls were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the corner of one's eye, and every few meters, holographic interfaces sprang to life as they passed. "Look at this," Kexri called from a side chamber. "It's some kind of historical record." The chamber's walls were alive with moving images, star maps, species they'd never seen, battles fought with weapons that defied comprehension. But it was the central image that made Sarah's breath catch. It showed a galaxy-spanning civilization, far more advanced than anything in the present, and walking among its impossible cities and starships were creatures that looked unmistakably human. "Impossible," Kexri whispered. "Your species only achieved spaceflight centuries ago." "Unless," Sarah reached out to touch the image, and the station's systems responded. New data flowed across the walls. "Unless we're not looking at humanity's past, but its future." A new alarm blared through their comm units. "Imperial forces have breached the defense perimeter," Wanderlust's AI announced. "They've adapted to the platform's attack patterns." Sarah cursed. Of course, Vexicon would find a way through. The hunter's reputation wasn't exaggerated. "Everyone back to the ship," she ordered over the comm. "We need tow." The station shuddered. New holograms appeared, showing Imperial ships attaching to multiple docking points around the structure. "They're boarding," Kexri hissed. "Vexicon won't be satisfied until he has our heads." But Sarah was watching the station's reactions. The purple energy lines were pulsing faster now, and new doors were opening around them, offering escape routes. "The station's helping us," she realized. "It's creating a path to something. Look how the energy flows lead deeper in." "We should run," one of the refugees argued. "Get back to the ship while we can." "The ship's surrounded," Sarah countered. "Our only chance is to follow the station's guidance. It protected us from the defense platforms. Maybe it can protect us from the Empire, too." A distant explosion echoed through the corridors. Imperial boarding parties, forcing their way in. Kexri's scales darkened with determination. "The human is right. We follow the lights. Form defensive positions around the children. Remember your training." They moved deeper into the station, following the pulsing purple pathways. Behind them, they could hear the Imperial forces spreading through the corridors. Occasionally, ancient defense systems would activate, slowing their pursuers but never stopping them completely. They're hurting us again, Sarah realized as they ran. Just like the defense platforms did. Leading us somewhere specific. But where? Kexri asked. They got their answer as they emerged into a vast chamber at the station's heart. Suspended in its center was a sphere of swirling energy, unlike anything they'd seen before. Holographic controls sprang to life around it. What is it? One of the children asked, their scales bright with wonder despite their fear. Sarah studied the controls, her mind racing. The symbols were different here, but something about their pattern. It's a gateway, like a jump drive, but more advanced. The station's been waiting for someone to find it. Imperial forces approaching central chamber. Wanderlust's eye warned through their comms. Multiple directions. Estimated 3 minutes until contact. Sarah turned to Kexri. I think I know why the station chose to help us. Why it revealed itself now. It's been waiting for the right moment. When species that were meant to be enemies chose to trust each other instead. New holograms appeared, showing images of countless civilizations rising, warring, falling, and then, finally, working together, growing beyond their conflicts. A test, Kexri breathed. All of this, the defense platforms, the station, it was testing us, waiting for someone to prove they could overcome their prejudices. And now it's offering us a way out. Sarah began working with the holographic controls, a chance to prove that cooperation is possible. The sphere of energy pulsed brighter. Behind them, they could hear the Imperial forces getting closer. But we don't know where it leads, one of the refugees protested. No, Sarah agreed, her hand steady on the controls. But we know what's behind us. Sometimes the only way to survive is to take a leap of faith. The chamber's doors began to seal as heavy weapons fire echoed through the station. They were out of time. Sarah looked at Kexri. Are you with me? The Arxian's scales rippled with what might have been a smile. Lead the way, human. You haven't been wrong yet. The gateway pulsed, ready to transport them to wherever or whenever the ancient station had prepared for them. Behind the sealed doors, they could hear Vexcon's forces preparing their final assault. Sarah took a deep breath. Well, my friends, let's make history. The gateway's energy field enveloped them like liquid light, and for one eternal moment, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. Sarah felt a sensation of movement without moving, of seeing without eyes. The children's frightened whistles, an Arxian stress response, echoed strangely in the void. Then, with a flash that left afterimages dancing in their vision, they materialized in a new chamber. This one was different, cleaner, brighter, its technology humming with active power rather than ancient sleep. Location unknown. Wanderlust's AI reported through their comm units, ship systems registering, temporal displacement. We've moved through time, Kexri asked, her scales shifting to a pale blue of uncertainty. Not exactly, Sarah replied, studying the holographic displays that sprang to life around them. Look at these readings. The station didn't just move us through space or time. It moved us sideways, into a pocket of space-time it created. The chamber shuddered. Through newly forming windows, they could see the Imperial ships still attached to the original station, but from an impossible angle, as if viewing them from a dimension that shouldn't exist. They can't see us, one of the refugee children said wonderingly. We're here but not here. Clever little one, Sarah smiled. That's exactly. A violent tremor cut her off. New warnings flashed across the holographic displays. The pocket is unstable, Sarah translated, her hands flying over the controls. The station's burning massive amounts of power to maintain it. We're safe from the Empire here, but not for long. How long? Kexri demanded. Minutes, maybe less. Sarah's mind raced. The station's showing us something. Look. The holograms shifted, displaying a complex sequence of energy patterns. They looked familiar somehow. Those are jump drive frequencies, Kexri said suddenly, but far more advanced than anything we have. With these, we could plot a course through regions of space we thought were impossible to navigate. The station's giving us a gift, Sarah realized. Knowledge that could change everything. But we have to survive to use it. Another tremor, stronger this time. Parts of the chamber began to fade in and out of existence. Wanderlust, status, Sarah called. Ship systems adapting to temporal pocket, the AI reported. But structural integrity is at risk. We need to leave soon, Captain. Sarah studied the dying station's gift, committing as much as she could to memory. The gateway's still active. We can use it to return. But what? Kex pressed. But I don't think it can send us all back at once. Not anymore. It barely has enough power left. Sarah met the Arxian's eyes. Someone needs to stay behind to operate the controls. Send everyone else through first. And whoever does won't make it back, Kex finished. Her scales darkened with understanding. I'll do it, Sarah said firmly. It's my ship, my responsibility. No, Kexri's voice carried the weight of command. You're the only one who can pilot Wanderlust through what's waiting on the other side. I'll stay. Sentinel. This is what we wanted, Kexri interrupted. To prove that change is possible. That species can grow beyond their prejudices. She touched the holographic controls. Let me prove it one last time. The chamber shuddered again. They were running out of time. The Empire will still be waiting, Sarah warned. Then you'll need these. Kexri quickly input commands, and new data streamed to Wanderlust's computers. Security codes, emergency protocols, everything I know about Vexicon's tactics. Use them well. Sarah wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in the Arxian's scales. This was a warrior's choice, a leader protecting her people. It has been an honor, Captain Chen, Kexri said formally. You've taught us much about courage, about trust. Now go, save our people. Make our sacrifice matter. The refugees were already gathering near the gateway, understanding the gravity of the moment. The children touched their scales to Kexri's in farewell, a gesture of deepest respect in their culture. Everyone aboard Wanderlust, Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. Quickly now. As they boarded, she turned back to Kexri one last time. When I was young, an Arxian commander told me humans were too weak to make hard choices, too selfish to sacrifice for others. I wish he could see you now. Wanderlust burst from the ancient station's docking bay like a bullet from a gun, its engines screaming at full power. Behind them, the massive doors finally gave way, and Imperial troops poured into the chamber they'd just left. Multiple Imperial vessels powering weapons, the AI warned. They're moving to surround us. Sarah's fingers flew across the controls, her mind racing through everything Kexri had given them. Uploading security codes now. Let's see if they work. The codes flashed across Imperial communication channels. For a crucial moment, the enemy ships hesitated, their targeting systems confused by what appeared to be high-level command authorization. That won't fool them for long, Sarah muttered, but it didn't need to. She was already implementing the next part of her plan, the ancient station's gift, the advanced jump drive frequencies. Pulsed in Wanderlust's computer, Sarah had never attempted anything like what she was about to try, but Kexri's sacrifice demanded she take the risk. Everyone hang on. She called over the ship's comm. This is going to get rough. She fired Wanderlust's main engines at full burn, heading straight for the thickest part of the nebula. The Imperial ships recovered from their confusion and opened fire, but Sarah was already weaving through their attack patterns. Supreme Hunter Vexicon is hailing us, the AI reported. Put him through. Sarah's voice was steel as she continued their run toward the nebula. Let's hear what the hunter has to say. A hologram materialized, an Arxian male with battle-scarred scales and cold, calculating eyes. Human. He spat the word like a curse. Return the traitors immediately, and I may allow you a quick death. Counter-offer, Sarah replied, her hand steady on the controls. Stand down and let us pass. Nobody else needs to die today. Vexcon's scales darkened with rage. You dare to bargain. Your ship is surrounded. The traitors will face imperial justice, and you. We'll show you something new, Sarah interrupted. She nodded to one of the refugee children, who had insisted on staying on the bridge. Show him your scales, little one. The child stepped into view of the hologram, and Vexcon's rage turned to shock. The young Arxian's scales were rippling with colors that shouldn't have been possible, patterns that echoed the ancient station's energy signatures. The station changed them, Sarah explained, even as she continued their flight toward the nebula. Changed all of us. We've seen what the future could be, Hunter. A future where species work together, where ancient wisdom guides us towards something greater. Lies, Vexcon snarled, but there was uncertainty in his secondary eyes. These are tricks. Then explain this. Sarah activated the jump drive, using the frequencies the station had given them. Wanderlust's engines hummed with new power as purple energy coursed through them. Space itself seemed to twist around the ship. The nebula's normally impenetrable clouds parted like curtains, revealing paths that had never existed before. Impossible, Vexcon whispered. The future often is, Sarah replied. Last chance, Hunter. Stand down. Instead, Vexcon roared orders to his fleet. Maximum weapons. Don't let them escape. But Sarah was already implementing the final part of her plan. Using Kexri's tactical knowledge, she had positioned Wanderlust perfectly. As the Imperial ships fired, she engaged the new jump drive. Space folded around them in ways that defied comprehension. The nebula's energy patterns, which had always been deadly to normal jump drives, resonated with the ancient frequencies. Wanderlust slipped between dimensions, dancing through gaps in reality that no modern ship could follow. The Imperial fleet's shots passed through empty space. When they tried to pursue, their conventional jump drives overloaded, forced to shut down to prevent catastrophic failure. New coordinates locked, the AI reported calmly. We can reach the free systems in one jump. Sarah looked back at the sensor display, showing the Imperial fleet hanging helpless in space. They had witnessed something that would change their understanding forever. Proof that their technological superiority wasn't absolute, that cooperation could achieve what conquest could not. Send them one last message, she told the AI. Tell them that Sentinel Kexri died so that both our species could learn to see differently, and that her sacrifice won't be wasted. The refugees on the bridge watched in awe as Wanderlust accelerated, purple energy crackling around its hull. The ship's systems, enhanced by the ancient station's gift, sang with power that bridged the gap between past and future. Jump drive engaged, the AI announced. All systems nominal. Sarah felt the weight of the moment, of everything they had gained and lost. This isn't just an escape, she told her passengers. It's a beginning. What we learned in that station, what Kexri died to protect, it's going to change everything. The young Arxian child, scales still shimming with impossible colors, moved to stand beside her. We'll make sure everyone knows, the child promised, about trust, about courage, about how a human taught us to see beyond our prejudices, and about how an Arxian taught a human the same thing. Sarah added softly. Wanderlust reached jump velocity, and space opened before them like a flower blooming in the void. As they made the jump, Sarah thought about the future the station had shown them, a future where species worked together, where ancient wisdom guided them toward the stars. They had lost much to gain this chance, but as she looked at her passengers, Arxian refugees with their shimmering scales, forever changed by their encounter with the ancient station, she knew they had gained something precious. Hope. Hope for a future where the barriers between species could fall, where trust could overcome fear, and where the combined strength of different peoples could achieve the impossible. Wanderlust vanished into jump space, carrying with it the seeds of change. Behind them, the ancient station powered down, its purpose finally fulfilled. It would wait in the darkness, ready to test the next visitors who dared to trust across the boundaries of species and prejudice. And in the free systems, a new story was about to begin.